I'm here today again with my friend Anne Laure Jackson. Hello, Anne.
It's great to be here.
Now, I was just checking recording. Always worth to check your recording. Only one time did I forget to hit that little red button. Right. So we have been working through the senses because if you've not met Anne before, she is a sensory specialist occupational therapist. So occupational therapy, helping people to live full lives and work and all that stuff, but with a specialty in sensory health. Is that how does that as an explanation?
Oh, thank
Is
you.
that okay?
Carry on.
Yes, I was chatting yesterday to an optician because I had my eyes tested. So I thought we'd start with this before we go back into the senses, because this is all about visual processing. Now, 6 months ago or so, I had my eyes tested. I knew my prescription would have changed because every 4 to 5 years for me, it's about right. It changes. Went to an optician. They got me some new glasses. I felt very rushed. I've had glasses a long time. So the glasses finally arrived and I started to feel immediately dizzy and sick and thinking, this cannot be right. So I went straight, well, I didn't leave the opticians. I said, you've got the wrong prescription. They got
Mhm.
very angry that I had the wrong prescription. And I'm thinking, your fault, not mine. So they did another test and says, oh, well, it was slightly out. Well, there's part of the problem. They then gave me a fresh set of lenses at their cost. I got those and I still felt dizzy and sick. So I thought, great, thanks for that. And they got so angry that it didn't work. I just left the shop and I moved on with my life. Yesterday, new optician, new prescription, completely different from what happened before. So it's changed quite a lot. I know my eyes don't. Therefore, it was an incorrect prescription. And this is my question to you about visual processing. I asked the optician, how do glasses actually function for me, because I have an astigmatism, which doesn't just distort like focus at long and short, it actually twists what my eye sees. How does that work? And he explained how that worked. And I understood why the prescription didn't work last time. Because he said there's two pieces of glass. It's not one that's shaped, it's two, and they stick them together, and you've got a rear and you've got a front. He said if they don't get that correct, then all of a sudden your eyes feel like they're fighting with one another, which is what I had. And I said, that's a really bad explanation. To which he said, no, your eyes fighting actually is exactly what's going on. Because as much as we need to correct each eye, so long and short vision, focus, all that sort of stuff, because of an astigmatism, we also need to correct that. But, and this is why opticians are skilled professionals, we have to get those two eyes working together through those four pieces of glass, two lenses. He said,
Mhm.
my thought is what happened was when they got the two glasses together, the two lens pieces, they got really mishmashed. So yes, technically you can focus, but now your eyes aren't actually able to work with one another. And we did a thing like a green line, which you probably understand more of. Are the eyes working together or are they opposing each other? How well do they function? Apparently my eyes function very well together. So I thought, very long explanation of, why do eyes fight together? And what's going on to make me feel dizzy and sick when technically I can see in focus, but the glasses are not working together with my eyes as one.
That's absolutely fascinating. And that also shows us we are dealing with the vestibular system when that gets involved. When we have that conflict between what the eyes are perceiving and what our brain tells us from a vestibular perspective of this is where we are in space. We understand depth perception. We understand how upright we are. You can imagine, like, if people would just want to try while they're listening or just watching, go around with your head tilted for a little bit and see how long you actually want to do that. And most of us don't want to do that. We naturally bring ourselves up so that our eyes are upright because it's our vestibular system that is picking up that we're on a tilt. So the combination of using the eyes to show you that you are upright and your ears, the vestibular system within your ears, telling you that you are upright, there is a balance in the fluid in those ears telling you what's what. Now, 20% of our vision goes into the vestibular system. So when people get car sick, often when people get seasick, it's often because of that. The eyes are saying one thing and the vestibular system is telling them another. And there is there's fighting going on again between them, which causes one system over another to win. And when we know the vestibular system is hugely involved in nausea, sickness, dizziness, dysregulation, then it's the vestibular system that wins at that point. So it's really important the information that goes into our senses is well balanced, well integrated, and processing well together. Otherwise, we get reactions like that. And because so much of your vision feeds into the vestibular system, then you are going to get vestibular type reactions.
I understand now more of the eye test because he was properly professional, was a very good guy. But he said one of the tests we do is there's a green line. So you look at a red dot and there's a green line horizontal, and then they do a green line vertical. And that's to make sure that when you're basically sitting upright with your eyes level, like you just said, that your eyes perceive the line basically level or perfectly vertical. And then they do a check to make sure, is it one side of the little dot or the other? Because they want to see, is one eye overly dominant over the other? And mine are okay. But that was, I just thought, interesting because it demonstrates how it's more than just what we see. It's also what our eye physically does. So I have an astigmatism, so it's already twisting how my eyes are slightly askew, if you like, in a sense, because of the astigmatism twists the eyeball kind of. So there's a physical issue which they can't resolve. So the glasses then correct that. But if that then is not balanced with the other eye, now the vestibular system, as you're saying, is kind of going haywire, saying, well, you're about to fall over, but you're not. But you are, but you're not. But you are, but you're not. And I'm sitting there thinking, please, can I put my old glasses off now? Because I'm really not enjoying this system.
Yeah.
Is that about it?
Yeah, and it's not nice.
No.
It really isn't nice, and it's just, and it's hard. And I think that's where, especially opticians and ophthalmologists and all the rest of it, those people who know their sense so well, it can be quite unnerving to have somebody say, oh, well, actually, but I feel worse because of what you have just prescribed. Now, there might be some obviously some fault that they've made along the way, but sometimes it's just that it's a bit more complex than they were, or your brain is a bit more complex than they were taking account of.
It seems the prescription was out, but not massively out. But as he explained, taking the rear and the front, if you don't get them to balance well on both sides, that's where you have your issues. So he said, my guess is, yes, the prescription was out, which means you would see less clearly, but the dizziness, the vomiting that I wanted to then do in his office, because he said, let's just try these glasses to see. They came off fairly quickly. He says it's because now my eye is fighting from what I can see through a lens into my actual eye, into my brain. And you've just got haywire because nothing is working peacefully and gently.
Yes.
Which was fascinating.
Yeah. And we get that same kind of reactions when people touch us unexpectedly. If your skin system isn't processing well, again, you'll have this immediate response, the same way your glasses needed to come off. It's just like, no, I need to have them off immediately. It's somebody comes up and touches you unexpectedly. It's just like you have an immediate response and maybe that immediate hit at somebody. You're like, you touch me, or you punch me, and it's just like, no, I didn't, or I might have brushed up against you, but I didn't. And it's just that instinctive. This isn't right. Something isn't good here, and I need to respond. I need to act to make it better.
Right now, moving on to what we've been doing. Can you move on backwards? I love the English language. Moving on to forwards, looking at what we've already done. You can't do in any other language, can you? So we've looked at hearing or audio processing. We've done sight, visual processing, which we've just touched on again. We've done smell, which I wanted to call smell processing, but you have a better description of it.
Olfactory.
We looked at touch, so tactile, what your fingers can touch, all that sort of stuff. And then taste we did last time. And now we're moving into an area where most people are going to go, you what? Hang on, there's 5. I thought there was 5 senses. So we've looked at the 5 basic senses, but there are other basic senses that probably you weren't taught about at school, including what we've just been talking about.
Including the vestibular sense.
Yeah.
So is that where we're moving into today?
Well, I think that would make sense since we've sort of touched on it a little.
Yeah, it is a phenomenal sense. So massively, well, basically not aware of to begin with, but is one of the most impactful senses across so many areas of life. So to start with the physicality of where it is, the inner ear, we know that there's a snail-shaped cochlea And that takes all the information as it comes through the ear and through the eardrum and little bones, and it gets taken and transmitted into sound waves and goes through the snail shell and gets then transmitted to the brain. Now, it's kind of like the antenna, the little spikes of a snail. They're kind of like eyes, ears, whatever you like to describe it. My snail anatomy is not good. However, there are the things that stick up from the cochlea on the inside of your ear. That is where the vestibular system is based. So again, right behind your ear, there's a really, really hard bone that sticks out, the hardest bone in the body. That is where our hearing center and our vestibular center are. Those vestibular receptors are positioned in there.
Sort of a tube-like lump.
It's a bit of a, just that, that lumpy bone.
Okay.
Just behind your ear.
Yeah, got that.
That's where we're going for. And you have two. So there's one on either side, because that's really important, because we have the jelly that sits inside these semicircular canals. So we have these little round things on the top of our snail shell. And at the bottom, we have these little copulas as well that hold other receptors that pick up movement. So the vestibular system is all about head movement. Anytime you move your head, you tip it forwards, you tip it backwards, you turn it to the side. Yes, you either turn it to the side or tip it to the side. So backwards, forwards, up and down, round and round, upside down. Any position where the head stays out of gravity or goes up and down according to gravity will be picked up by your vestibular system. So any sense of movement can cause people to be sick. Any sense of movement is going to alert. So that's why when we sleep, our heads are flat and we do not move. Anytime we would move, then it's likely to wake us up, because that's just one of our one of the things that wakes us up first thing in the morning. And that's where sometimes if you're dealing with teens, it's really hard to get them out of bed. So you're better to try and slowly change the head position in order to actually get them out of bed, because it's the feeling of, oh, do I really have to move? They might be able to move their arms and their legs. So you start with there and then leave the head last, because it's the vestibular system that we really need to wake up to then get out of bed. So yeah, just a little tip if you're dealing with any teenagers, then work on the body and work on the other senses. Get more light, get more sound, get more physical activity into the muscles and the joints, and then leave the head position to the last before you get them up. Anyway, where was I? So we've got those 5 receptors, basically. Any position that we move round and round and round, and any time we move up and down, backwards and forwards, side to side. And there's different types of receptors that pick up different types of movement.
I'm making some notes as we go, because this is really interesting stuff.
Because there's all of that stuff, that the different types of things it affects, that I probably should I just carry on?
Yeah, no, I'm just making a few notes because there's things I've got to come back to you about, because this is really fascinating. And like you say, this is massively impactful, and it's making me think of lots of issues that people think, oh, I'll take drugs for, generally speaking. Prescribed drugs, not illegal ones. When actually I'm thinking, but this might actually be solvable in a different way. So yes, please carry on.
Okay. So when we actually look at the function of the vestibular system, it's very grounding. First and foremost, we often talk about it on those maps that you might see in town, and it says you are here, and it has that little red dot. It has a very grounding basis for us, because there are some people, if they are not grounded in gravity, as it were, their vestibular receptors are not picking them up, they do feel very floaty. They're not very strong in their sense of self. It sounds a bit philosophical, but it is actually, you see it in real life. But often, folks would say it does feel as though like I'm floating away, and they genuinely aren't grounded from a real physical perspective. They don't feel their bodies well on Earth, and we need to work with the vestibular receptors to help them register that input better. But it involves coordination, a big part of coordination. Being able to use the 2 hands and 2 sides of the body doing things differently. So for cutlery, for doing up bows, for coordination, for sports, plays a massive impact in that, and being able to sequence what you do and organize your body movements, big part in that. big part in those arousal levels, the levels of alertness to be able to do something. So that if you are sitting at your desk and you're just getting a bit drowsy, we instinctively get up and either go to the loo, or we put the kettle on, or we go and do something, because movement, we are raising our bodies up in gravity. We're getting off the seat, we're turning our head, we're moving things around. Getting some input into the vestibular system will just alert you. So it's a big thing when people are on conferences or away for the day, that there are movement breaks added into it. Otherwise, you get people who are really sleepy by the end of the day, because they've had a lot of auditory input, but they haven't had a lot of vestibular input because they've been sat for most of the day. So it's arousal levels, it's coordination, it plays a part in language. We see that, like roller coasters and things like that, fairgrounds are one of the noisiest places because vestibular stimulation stimulates language, stimulates communication. So anyway, yeah, there's just a few. I'll pass it over. Otherwise, I could be here for a long time just doing a complete monologue, and that's not what we're about. So carry on.
The last one I've just written down was movement breaks, because I've heard of these in various contexts now. Let's have a movement break, stand up. They always link it to, especially networking events, go and speak to somebody you don't know. Okay. But actually, although that's quite good at a networking event, you should, but it's the getting up part, which probably is more important than any conversation at that moment when you just don't really care who that person is across the way. But actually getting up, waking your brain up. Yes, I am still alert. I am still alive. It's like on a sat nav. Our sat nav, if you don't move and it's switched on, says you haven't moved location for so long, I'm going to switch off. I've moved. I don't know why you've not checked that, but I have, honestly. Cancel, don't switch off. And sometimes a bit like a GPS can get confused. Our brain can get confused, I guess, and think, well, you're asleep now because you've not moved. Is that sort of underpinning the movement break?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, and I think the traditional church is brilliant at this. Traditional church, stand up, do this, sit down, stand up, sit down. You go to an Anglican traditional service, you've got so many movement breaks. To the end, you're thinking, can I just sit down for 5 minutes? Because now I'm exhausted. Which maybe is the point. Anyway, another one. I think we've touched on this once before. Old people or older people, adults, against younger people on a roundabout can have very different reactions. Young people, or children, particularly toddlers, get on a roundabout, spin at 100 miles an hour, get off. Okay, what's for dinner? Somebody who's an adult is on for 3 seconds, then falls off and throws up. That's the vestibular system, I guess, because in a toddler, it's very different. But why?
The fluid.
Oh, okay.
The fluid, the viscosity, I believe, it just gets a bit thicker as we age. And there is an aging. So sometimes it's just, sometimes it's the fluid, and sometimes it's just where the vestibular system is at. Because I think we're designed to move a lot when we are little in order to get the brain connected, in order to get those neurons fired, so that we can become functional, so that we can become as coordinated as we can be. And feeding the vestibular system, because it's a powerful sense, is why children need to move so much. Because they need an awful lot of their vestibular system to develop still, to network around the brain, so that it can feed into language, it can feed into emotional regulation, for people to feel calm and content and connected, which is part of what I describe as sensory health. It fires into the cerebellum, which is the balance and the coordination. The vestibular system is phenomenal, the way that the impact that it has around the brain, and the visual sense, the hearing sense, all of the senses, massively impacted. And the vestibular system has its little, what do you call them, fronds, all over the place. It's not the word, but you know what I mean. Yeah, yep. Networks and neuronal networks.
I've just written down self-defense as a design thing. So you just said that with children, it's, you think, thinner sort of fluids in the ear. So as we get older, it gets thicker, which is why somebody who's 18 might get on a swing, a roundabout, and then throw up, but a 8-year-old or a 4-year-old probably wouldn't. And I wrote down this as a question. Do you think that's something to do with the design that God made in order to allow younger people who need to then understand how to, interact with their environment? Do you think that's part of the design in order that they can? Because if that was the same as for an adult, they wouldn't be exploring what they can do because they would be feeling sick all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is remarkable the way that we've been designed to develop. Why couldn't we just like been born and then we just immediately within a year grow to be an adult? It's like, actually no, we're not designed like that. It's a slow process, and it's year on year, it's day by day, it's month by month, and 18 years, 25 years until our systems are fully developed. That's an awful lot of development to be happening. And yeah, the enjoyment of seeing children. And what is so lovely is that our senses and our sensory processing and our sensory integration is so much fun when it is in a good place. Obviously, when it's not in a good place, we do have children being sick because their vestibular systems are overreactive, and they don't have good balance. So, but most of the time, it is a delight to see, children physically engaged in things because it is delightful for them. It is fun because the senses are integrating and they get more, they want to challenge themselves and be more and more coordinated. So what they can do at 7 is very different to what they can do at 3, that they're just continually pushing themselves on because they are motivated to explore life and living and moving and challenge themselves, which is part of our beautiful design too.
I'm going to come back to some. I'm just writing down now about development and laces. We'll come back to that one. Right now, one I've seen. I think we may have touched on this, or maybe I meant to, but never actually got there. So motion sickness is something that many people, particularly adults, will understand and acknowledge, whether it's because you're in a car and you've got motion sickness from that. Perhaps you're on a swing and you're going much, much faster than you wanted to. Now you've got motion sickness. Or perhaps on a boat, which is more common, or even a little rowboat if you're very sensitive. And one of the things I saw for driving specifically was glasses that have got side window things with like a blue fluid in it. And some people say, oh, it's brilliant. Now I can go in a car, do all the things I wanted to do without motion sickness. So my question to you is, what is that? And is that real? And if it's real, does it actually work? Do you know?
I've never seen it, do you know?
Okay.
Is it just colour that they have at the side of their glasses?
Do you know, it's like it's like two different fluids. So you've got different colors. So you can see a blue line and a white line effectively. So it's like having a blue, heavier water so they don't mix. And then as you move, these things are sort of looking like waves going across in the side. But people say they wear these things and now they don't get motion sickness. They can read. Now, I've seen plenty of adverts for these, which makes me think, well, this is a purchasable product. Therefore, is it good or not? I don't know. But the argument is that you have clear, normal glasses to see forwards. So if you don't wear glasses, it's just clear. But at the sides of both eyes is this stuff with a blue gel, kind of, that moves.
Yeah, the only thing that would do is to help see if it will correct your visual input to compensate with the vestibular, because the jelly or the gel, the liquid, the fluid will be corresponding to what's going on in your vestibular system. But obviously, it's not your own vestibular system that's in those jelly. It's just the liquid that they put on in the glasses. So they're possibly trying to get your eyes to coordinate with your vestibular system, so there is no fighting.
Okay.
It technically, I'd be interested. It technically could work, but it does depend on why you're getting motion sickness in the first place. For those who it's the eyes that isn't perceiving, that isn't well linked with the vestibular system, that could well work for them. If they're getting motion sickness because it's their actual vestibular system full stop, that's not going to touch it. It's not going to make a difference at all.
Okay. It's sort of like two pairs of glasses, like a normal pair of glasses, but the lens is then also on the side, filled with the liquid, so they don't mix. So you've got one is blue, one is clear. So then you've got that looking a bit like a wave as you're moving your head or the car's moving. Obviously, these waves are moving in correspondence. So I will find one of them and send you a picture.
Okay, because it's similar. Because what happens on the inside of your vestibular system, you have the cilia. You've got you've got the little waves on the inside that are moved by the jelly. So that's what sends the impulses to your brain in order for it to process the movement, or how much you're tipping, how much you're doing anything else. So the fact that they will probably have picked the same viscosity that we have on the inside of our vestibular system to put inside the glasses, so that it absolutely mirrors what the jelly is doing, what the liquid is doing on the inside of your inner ear for you to perceive. So very clever idea.
I've seen it a few times, and people say now I can read in a car, or I can just sit and enjoy the scenery without feeling sick while I'm sitting in a car. So it's one of those where I think, well, is it because you're selling the product? So you're not going to say, yes, I'm selling this, it's rubbish. You're going to say it's good. But then I always think, but is that a real product that's doing something for real, or is that all your mates who have bought it so you can sell them? Because it just looks a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, for those, yeah, for some it'll be an absolute gimmick, and it won't touch them. I think anything where we say this is a one size fits all. I have yet to find anything that's a one size fits all.
I haven't found a one size fits all hat or a one size fits all scarf. I'm still waiting to find that one. Right. Laces. Now, you were talking about development of 4 and 7. When my littlest son went to school, he was right at the far end of the year group. So in the UK, usually September, that's when your birth, up to September, you go to school. So you can get children who are virtually 12 months apart in age in the same year group. Now, he went to school at 4, but he was only just 4. Everybody else in the entire class was absolutely 11 months plus further away. And the teacher even commented, wow, we've never had this before. Now, everybody in the class could hold a pen. They could use a pen. They had tactile, wonderful dexterity. They could tie shoelaces, and Peter couldn't. And they made a bit of fun of him, but it wasn't that he had an inability. He was almost a year younger. And at 4 years old, that's 25% of his life different, which is huge.
It is huge. Yeah, and there's for laces, goodness me, a 4-year-old trying to do laces. I mean, they're ahead of the game if they are. If they're doing those, then goodness. There are different techniques for doing laces, but still, no, it is a lot. As you say, 25% of somebody's life is massively different.
It just struck me about how we develop at different ages, but even a year. I mean, this was about 11 months or so. The difference was not could he or couldn't he. He could barely hold a pen because not inability, but he hadn't got the dexterity yet. He's barely 4. You know, he's 1,200 days old, not 1,500. You know, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, my boy. That's why I kept my eldest off school. Certainly, I thought, oh no, I'm going to wait till they're 7. I thought, oh yeah, who needs to do handwriting? Who needs to do shoelaces before they're 7? You know, if he's ready, he's ready. He'll learn it. He'll just get on and do it. But if he's not, I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah, it was really hard because I made fun of him. Oh, well, you're the same age.
Right.
Well, in the same year group, a year different virtually, and that's a different thing entirely.
Yeah.
Because we develop differently.
Yeah.
The vestibular system. So we've done the 5 senses. This is one of the 2 extra normal senses, I might call them. Not necessarily the basic ones, but normal. They are there. We'll do another one next week. And then we've got the 8th, which is a group. So don't get overwhelmed by this. It's much more simple than you think it is. And if you're not sure, ask Anne, which is where I was going to go next, because your whole world is around helping people who are suffering from motion sickness and don't know why, and glasses aren't helping. Well, perhaps there's a conflict mentally or physiologically. Perhaps you've probably got a better way of describing it. And that's where you can help them to not feel motion sickness, because actually it's not this, it's this problem instead. And that's why we need a specialist.
It is great to be able to assess, to find out what is going on. Whether I can then do something about it or not, unless you get a proper sensory processing and integration assessment, you'll never know. And that's my biggest thing. It's just at least come in, have an assessment. If there's any area of life that is just, you're just not as happy as you feel you want to be in it. You're just not as coordinated. You're not as content. You're not as calm. And you want to be. They're the people that I want to work with. You know, there are loads of people who are completely uncoordinated, but it's just the way it is. And, you know, good on them. You know, that's great. But if you want help, then I'm here to help.
Which, coming back to my example of the glasses, the thing that I found was I got very agitated because I felt very, very sick. I was not really in control of how I felt, because now my eyes are really messing with my brain because the glasses are just not working right. That's just me, who doesn't have visual processing issues beyond physical issues, suddenly entering the world briefly of somebody who has a visual processing struggle that is not a physical problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sort of as a glimpse, a very short glimpse. I don't understand the struggles they go through, but I had a glimpse and I didn't like it.
No, absolutely, and that's a big part of when the start of the sensory super system, which is the basis of everything that I do, because we need to start with that assessment. It's like, have a go, try some of these things where we just mess with your senses a little bit, just enough to feel like, oh yeah, this is hard for some people, or actually yes, that's like exactly what I feel all the time. And when they know that I understand that, then there's an element of they can trust that I can do something about it. So
we can help a 4-year-old to hold a pen. Yes, we can do that. But then when we're 40, all of a sudden we can hold a pen, but we don't know why we can't write. And maybe there's another issue. And that's where Laure Jackson comes in. And if you want to know more and to connect with Anne to find out how you can have her help, then you can go to pure247radio.org, pure247radio.org/ALJ for Anne Laure Jackson. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And we'll come back to more next time.
Rated 5 stars by Sorted Magazine's film critic, Pure 247 takes you behind the scenes of the birth of a global Christian radio station. Andy B will have you laughing and crying as you discover what it takes to create ministry that matters in this inspiring tale of perseverance, honesty and vulnerability. Buckle up and get ready for a story that's uplifting as it is entertaining. Behind the microphone, they face bankruptcy, eviction and 2 life-changing surgeries. Can they make it? Will they make it? Get your copy of this life-changing book today. Pure 247 is available now on Amazon. Andy B is best described as a man after God's own heart, who insists that God's vision and resourcing trump all handicaps.